Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Anthony Medlin, and this is Bryan Spenser here. Bryan Spenser is a teacher of mine, I guess 12 years ago. He was my
Long time
government
ago.
teacher a long time ago. Now, he's meeting with me today, despite the fact that I slept through most of his classes.
You managed to get enough done to pass.
Yeah, I managed to get it passed, but I think that's just because I like you. Me and you had a bond, but
Well, yeah, I try to have a bond with all my students. I try to interact and
yeah.
just be part of them.
Yeah, one of the things that I've really noticed from you that's inspired me, and one of the reasons why I've continued a relationship with you is because you are especially good at maintaining relationships with people, which you're the first person that ever taught me. It's not what you know, but who you know,
Oh yeah, it's definitely who you know.
because that phrase has stuck with me for a very long time, and I always contributed to you saying it, even though I've heard it before. But you live that, so
Oh
tell
yeah,
me about
because
that.
well, I have my own strengths and weaknesses, just like everybody else. And there's some things that I know that I should never try. For example, I am not spatial. I'm not constructional. I don't buy Christmas gifts that say some assembly required because that's just not who I am. That's what I have friends for. I mean, other than putting batteries in and flipping the switch, I'm not the person that you want putting something together. I never shop at IKEA because I know that comes in a box and you have to put it together. That's not me. So, if I know my strengths and weaknesses, so I try to use my strengths to help other people.
Sure.
At the same time, things that I can't do, I have to have friends to cover for my weaknesses.
Yeah.
So, what I do really, really well is, I meet a lot of people. I recognize their positives, and I try to connect those dots. So if there's a need, like if there's a need for something to be done, I know somebody who can do that, and I try to connect the dots. And so though it's really important for you to keep meeting more and more people, keep learning about people, invest in them,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where I was going earlier when I was talking about going to college, and I had a class called philosophy, and one of the assignments, and this is one of those assignments that's not worth a lot of points, but if you put some effort into it, it has meaning.
Sure.
And Dr. Sawyer asked us to come up with our life motto, and I came up with invest in people. Uh, and
Wow.
and that's what I basically lived on all my life is investing in other people. That's why I volunteer at the food pantry. I became a JC member to get involved in a community service organization. That's why I became a teacher and not working for my father's construction company, or
Yeah.
even though I miss the farm. I mean, I appreciate and respect all the work that the farmers do, but that's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And like I was telling to you off of this interview that when I worked for my father on a bulldozer at the age of 14, I actually worked harder at not working than actually doing the job. So I learned how to work from my father, whether I wanted to or not.
Yeah. Well, there's something interesting, and everybody knows that watches this podcast that Visiblepreneur is about making businesses more visible. And one of the key components to being a business owner, even though you're, involved in politics and you're currently a teacher, it's really important to know because every business owner needs to be spending a lot of time meeting people and having relationships with people. So tell me about break down your daily what do you do with your life? Like how many what events do you go to? Where might people be able to find you? Yeah, talk
So
about that.
that's a really tough question because every day is completely different.
Sure.
There's some days where I just have like one or two events that I go to. Today I only have like three events, which is a light day,
Yeah.
and I'm at the end of my term for term limits, so my days are starting to become more and more free. But at the same time, in the middle of my term, especially at the beginning, I would go from like 6 in the morning to like 11, 12 at night. I even remember a gentleman who was just harassing me. He was on the other side of the ticket, but
Yeah.
I represent them too. And he's like, "Oh, well, you are a do nothing politician. All you do is vote." And I'm like, "No, there's so much more to my job."
Yeah.
Um, and I told him one time, you call me someday, pick a day, I don't care.
Yeah.
And you call me, and I'll tell you what time I start the next day, and you're welcome to follow me around. So he did. About a couple weeks later, he called me. He goes, I want to follow you tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, great. And he just happened to pick one of the busiest days ever. And I'm like, well, we start with a prayer breakfast at 6:30 at Bob Evans. So I'll meet you there. And you can ride with me the rest of the day. You can be involved in my everyday affairs, and everything I do, you can do. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, he recanted his statement that politicians do nothing.
Yeah.
And then he's like, take me back to my truck. And I'm like, we're not done. We're not done. We still have this and this and this, and this is all the other things that we're doing. He goes, you are definitely a public servant and not a politician. I appreciate the effort. And even though he probably never voted for me because he's on the other ticket.
Yeah.
And me, even though.
And that, just to verify, are you Republican?
I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
And so even though he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican, he recognize and respect all the effort that I have to invest in the community, because part of my platform is I'm going to be an active listener.
Yeah.
I'm going to be involved in the community, and I'm going to be responsible for my own actions. So if there's something that you want to call me out on, please call me out. And if I can't verify or give you the reasons why I voted a certain way, then I don't deserve your vote. That's the way I always took at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just talking about how you saying 3 events is a very, very small in a day. Like, I attend networking events, and I go like once a week. So like, seeing what you do is really inspiring. How important is it? What do you believe that meeting people and helping people, how I guess what I'm trying to say is, how impactful is that on life?
It really depends on your definition of meeting people. So if you're going and you're just shaking hands and moving on, you're really not invested in that person. So to invest in people, it means it's going to take time, it's going to take effort to get to know them, to learn about them, and then, figure out how a way they can help you and you can help them. Sure. So that's where the networking is important. Just exchanging business cards, not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do the legwork. That's why, running for a public office is really tough. So, when they're looking at me, deciding whether or not I'm worth the effort, they look at what impact I've had on the community, whether it's, going to church, it's volunteering at the food pantry, all the different activities and service organizations that I did with the JCs. It's me coaching 3 different sports for 15 years. It's me teaching school for 22 years and all the relationships that you work to build. On top of teaching, I was also an educational consult for Metropolitan Psychiatric Center.
Yeah.
I also did worked at Riverport Amphitheater for 21 years. And even though I didn't make a lot of money, the reason why I worked there is because they hired all my kids.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they hired kids from my volleyball, football, or wrestling team. They hired students out of my classroom. They hired my conduct disorder, my learning disabilities. They hired my blind students, my autistic students. I mean, they hired everybody. And so basically my job, even though I had a really nice title being assistant operations manager, my main job was to make sure these kids did their job and was a job coach.
Yeah.
So you got that. I worked at Lighthouse of the Blind. I was an
My grandpa works there currently. Yeah.
Lighthouse of the Blind?
Yeah.
Ah, very good. I worked there. I worked at the Rascals Ballpark as an alcohol compliance officer.
I wanted to like you back in high school there.
Well, no, because my job is to identify fake IDs and making sure that people were carding and people were not buying that were not of age.
Sure.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't have liked me.
I would. I don't think I would have liked you at all. I think we would have argued. But
yeah.
I never ran into you at a concert. But been lots of concert, but I never
Yeah,
ran into one.
I've 21 years, anywhere from 45 to 60 concerts a year. I never want to go to a never concert again. If someone has free
Right.
tickets, I'm like, give them to somebody else, because I've been there. I mean, I've been with the concert series. I mean, I've heard everybody. Where every concert now is white noise. I couldn't even tell you what songs playing unless I pay attention.
Yeah, you're bombarded with music. Yeah, I mean that's awesome. So also I wanted to mention early on in the video so that people who a lot of people are going to at least watch till here. You are going to be running for state senate in 2022. Is that correct?
That's correct. So right now we have term limits in Missouri. So you're allowed 4 2-year terms as a representative, and you're allowed 2 4-year terms for Senate. So I'm at year number 8, and we are right before the primary. So in August, on Tuesday, they're going to be electing someone who replaces me because I'm on my way out the door. Mm-hmm. And so we'll know on Tuesday who's going to replace me. And granted, that person doesn't get sworn in until January 5th at noon.
Okay.
I'll still be the state representative until January 5th at 11:59.
Okay, makes sense. So we've touched on a lot of things. I think what's really cool is that for our viewers that watch our channel that are business owners, I mean, this is a staple of a man who really not just goes out and meets people, but out of the people that he meets, he actually spends a lot of time getting to know about them. And as much time as I have in a day, or I think that I'm limited on time to meet with people and to understand people, you find a way to do it. And you're a busy man.
I'm mentally ill.
Yeah, yeah. And you work a lot. You really take a lot of pride in your work.
And a lot of that has to do with not doing something that you want to do, but doing something that you have to do. Yep. So if you have a certain goal that you want to accomplish, it's like there's going to be parts of it that you don't want to do. And you just have to put in the mindset that this is something you have to do, and you have to muddle through it to get to that end goal.
Yeah. I really hope that you do. I will vote for you. And
well, it depends on where the lines are.
Yeah.
You may be outside my lines.
I will. I'll also say that with everything that's going on with coronavirus right now, I think that it is. I know that events have been closed down. Isaiah, we got here. That's our sound equipment guy that did the last couple of videos. He does live events, and he hasn't been able to do a lot of work recently. But how do you think that it's impacted small businesses, and do you think it's getting any better?
All right, so that's a loaded question with a loaded intro.
Yeah.
So the problem with the coronavirus, there is so much information out there that is contradictory, that nobody knows what to believe. Yeah. So the problem with government, the problem with an individual, the problem with a business, whether it's a box store or an individual entrepreneur, the problem is you have to have some type of integrity. And integrity means that you're truthful, people can trust you, you have an honest, and that they know that they're getting what they paid for. And with the coronavirus, there's been so many things out there. And I always hate when they say, it's follow the science. Well, the science is a process.
Yeah.
And so there's many different processes. So you can't trust science.
It always changes.
It always changes.
Yeah.
The method always changes. And they say follow the data. Well, the problem that I've learned being in the House of Representatives is that data is based upon what you believe, and the truth doesn't necessarily matter. Only what you get people to believe is the truth that matters. So, I mean, let's take an issue like a hot topic like right to work. That was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
The people who are for right to work, they would come in with their talking points. They would have their charts and data, and it made sense. And then the unions came in who were against right to work. They would have their talking points. They would have their charts and data, and they make sense. So really, who's telling the truth? The problem is both sides were cherry picking the truth in order to sell their story, and then becomes a propaganda war. And so it comes down to what you can get the people to believe. I mean, and once you believe something, it's futile to get them to change their opinion because most people, even though they say they're open mind, they're not. Yeah. So there's that aspect. The other part of your question, which that took care of the intro part, you got to the impactfulness of an entrepreneur. One of the assignments that I had people do in my careers class, which I believe you took that class, is to have a circle me, and then you do a huge diagram of all the different connections that you have. So if you belong to Boy Scouts, you put Boy Scouts here and all the different people that you come in contact, whether it's a person that's in Scouts with you or the troop leader or maybe a sponsor, maybe someone who's been an Eagle Scout. If you go to church, who are the people there? What are their talents? What are their skills? And so you have this network of connections, and eventually some of those will cross over. It's like, oh, I know, not only is this person in Boy Scout, but they also work here at Taco Bell with me and that kind of stuff. So you build that network, and the next thing deals with integrity. I mean, meeting something, like I was saying earlier, by a business card is not something to establish a foundation of relationship. Yeah. You got to have something that you connect with. That's why I belong to the JCs. And even though we may be raising money for Alzheimer's or USO or whatever, we were working on an event, whether it's slinging beer or selling hot dogs or whatever. We were rubbing elbows, and then you got that little chit chat as you're working together on a common goal.
Sure. Yeah, and that's one of the big things is having those connections. And one of the things I've noticed is that due to COVID shutting a lot of these things down, you said a lot so far, so I do want to touch on what you said, but
you gave me a loaded question with several parts.
I did give you a very loaded question. I'm sorry about that.
So with COVID, I mean, and the government, I mean, they're trying to pick winners and losers. Yeah. And I remember when I first got elected to Jeff City, I'm like, I'm not going to pick winners and losers. And when I got to Jeff City, I'm like, oh, that's all we do. Just pick winners and losers. And, the winners were like the big businesses. Yeah, and
Walmart, Home Depot.
All the big box stores. And the losers were all the mom and pop stores. Yeah. And it's okay for you to go into Walmart with no mask, but you can't go to a mom and pop even with a mask.
Do you think that like widens the gap from wealth to poor? And it kind of hurts the middle class?
Well, yeah, because, I mean, if you look at the stock markets, even though it crashed in March and got down to 19,000, now it's already bounced back to 26,000, is approaching new highs, and it's all because of Amazon and Walmart and all these big box stock stores. But if you look at who runs the state and who's the backbone of our economy, it's the mom and pops. Like over 70% of our employees are hired onto with mom and pops. And so
mom and pops pay higher, typically.
Well, I don't know if they pay higher, but they're more invested into their employees. Sure. They have more of a relationship. I mean, there's not much of a relationship between a big box store such as Best Buy and their employees. Yeah. I mean, why should I invest in you? If you're gone, I can hire somebody else. Yeah. So, and they don't care if your kids are sick. They don't care. You don't have that relationship. They're about, can you do the job? Can you help me make money? We don't care about your problems. Yeah. All we care about is our problem, and our problem is making money. And
sure. How do they fight back, though? Like, how do they fight against this? Because social media has probably made it a lot more difficult. They've been able to throw the narrative out there and influence the minds of a lot of people. But how do mom and pop stores fight back and say, no, I'm staying open without ridicule?
Well, I mean, you've seen the hairdresser, you've seen a barber in Michigan, you've seen a lot of people who just are defiant of the government. Yeah. And I know a couple of gym owners who have been arrested. Sure. I know that they've come to shut down businesses by force. This is the definition of tyranny. Yeah. And so it would have to do it the Gandhi, Martin Luther King way and just be, nonviolent civil disobedience.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, there's other ways that the government is being more tyrannical, and that's like going cashless. There's not a coin shortage. However, they've created this coin
Yeah.
shortage in order to go to a cashless society, and that is terrible for mom and pop businesses. It's terrible for entrepreneurs, even on a high school level, as far as someone mowing your grass or doing side jobs for like union or yourself, because cash is king, and they're trying to kill the king. But if you have a cashless society, it takes away your freedom to do those things because the government wants a transaction or a record of
Everything.
everything that you do. I mean, it's going to eliminate even the small entrepreneurs, such as the little girl selling lemonade on a lemonade stand.
Yeah, that's a scary thing because I've had a power washing company when I was 15, and I remember get collecting cash or going door to door shoveling snow, and like those things they're trying to eliminate so that they could tax it, but
Not only tax that fee or service, but they're also going to start taxing your transactions. So every time money changes hands, you're going to be paying the government a little bit of money.
doesn't that already mostly happen whenever with sales tax though?
Um, it is, but that's with sales tax, the government is collecting month's sales, but this is going to be an extra
Okay.
transaction type of tax.
Oh, that's not good. I definitely don't like that at all.
But not everything is taxed. I mean, if you do a side job for money, I mean, it's under the table. I mean, the government wants control over everything.
Do you think Bill Gates has anything to do with this?
Well, I have no idea about the transactions, and I do not know a lot of things about Bill Gates.
Yeah.
But he's part of the people who would like the one world government. So I know that cashless society is one of his objectives.
Um, how do we civilly fight against that? Like because these guys are so powerful, and nowadays, people have such a vast control over our minds with social media and all these different things to where they could throw narratives out and they could throw facts out. They could decide what is seen and heard and by everybody. How do we fight as people who know that we don't want this globalist, one world, type of society? How do we say no? We're not going to do it.
So I would definitely be emptying out your penny jars and buckets and making sure that small businesses have plenty of change.
Yeah.
Um, because even though the reserves is hoarding them
Yeah.
and not printing as many, of course they're going to blame COVID and the workers not being shut down and that kind of stuff. They're going to blame that on that. But I would definitely keep trying to use more cash as possible. If we fail to stop the cashless society, you're going to see a lot of people start to bring back bartering, where they trade goods and services for other goods and services and leave the cashless society alone. Now, granted,
Yeah.
using a credit card or a debit card is convenient, but we need to find other ways to make sure that the government doesn't have a complete watch and a complete control over every single thing that we do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I was watching something. That this is going to be controversial. I was watching something on Edward Snowden the other day. So we've already experienced some things with the government having complete control and invading our privacy. So now they're just trying to go a step further. Do
Yeah,
you?
Edward Snow, he's the one that downloaded a lot of secrets, and
Yeah.
so I don't know where I stand on that.
Yeah.
I
No, I
mean,
understand. But
the fact
we,
that he's in another country hiding, who did he give that information out? Is he trying to undercut the United States? I don't know the answers to those questions,
sure.
so I'm not prepared to make too many comments on Mr. Snowden.
Well, let's avoid Snowden. Let's just focus on the NSA. Let's focus on, the invasion of privacy that we're seeing with stuff like Facebook right now, where they're collecting our data, to where they've been in court several times over it, selling data, and where people are beginning to feel like this is our privacy, this is our data, this is the Constitution says that this is ours. We own it, not them.
Well, the problem that you have with Facebook and Twitter and the social medias and different websites that you go into or whatever, they're all collecting data on us, and knowledge is key. And we are willingly trading our liberties for them collecting information on us. So the fact that we are like lemmings being herded to the cliff, I mean, that's sadly is our decision. And we need to purposely stop the using of these products such as Facebook and Twitter. And I just don't think people want to do that, because we no longer know how to have a relationship with a person. We no longer know how to be actual friends.
Yeah.
You know,
People act very antisocial on social media sites.
well, that's because, you know, there's no one there to call them on the carpet, so they can be cowardly keyboard warriors whenever they want. And, you know, again, it's not necessarily the truth that matters, is what you get people to believe. So they can start a smear campaign on you. And, you know, pictures that you were at a party with and you had maybe a beer in your hand, they can turn that into, you're a raging alcoholic, we shouldn't trust you because of this picture. And they say pictures don't lie, but pictures do lie nowadays, because with Photoshop and all the graphics that they do with green screen and stuff, they can make pictures and videos lie now. But people haven't registered that in their head.
If you had to think,
I sound like a conspiracy theorist.
no, that's okay. If you had to say, I would agree with a lot of what you're saying. There's some things that are undeniable of what you're saying. Is that why would the Federal Reserve not have enough coins? It doesn't make any sense. They could easily make it, and they're hoarding things like gold too. This is not a conspiracy. This is a fact, and that they are pushing cashless society.
They are pushing a cashless society. They've been prepping us all along.
Yeah.
And that's going to be easier for them now, because people have gotten used to paying things by credit card or through
They
loan.
have an excuse too.
Yeah, direct deposit, direct withdrawal. You know, you know, like for me, I don't have a problem with people putting money into my bank, but I don't let anybody automatically take money out of my bank.
Yeah. No, I understand that for sure. I've ran into troubles with that. If you were the forefathers right now that they sat down and they wrote the Declaration of Independence, and then they wrote the Constitution, and when they meant it, that's what the firm foundation that they wanted to build America on. Are we even America if we don't? Those are the foundation of America. If we don't stand for what they said on those pieces of paper, are we even America anymore?
So the Declaration of Independence is basically a Dear John letter to England. It's a breakup letter.
Yeah.
This is why we're breaking up with you.
Yeah.
It's like sending a text to your girlfriend, I'm breaking up with you for these reasons.
It does say on the letter, though, that anyone on the Declaration of Independence, that if a government does what England did to them to take away their freedoms, then you have the responsibility to stand up and take over.
Correct, but we don't take responsibility in today's society. It's always somebody else's fault. It's how do I point the finger at somebody else? Don't point it at me, point it at somebody else. And then you have a campaign to try to get other people to believe you and not them, of whose fault it really is. I mean, we don't take responsibility for our own actions. And one of the purpose of the Constitution was individual liberties, individual responsibilities, and people just want the liberties and not the responsibility.
I also want to talk about something pretty important with the Constitution, with the Republican Party in general, as far as how they go with minorities. I looked up the definitions, and by definition, a republic, which is basically the root word of Republican, is, instead of being a democracy where
We're not a
a
democracy.
democracy is a majority rule,
Mob rule.
yeah, mob rule. That's like the pure democracy. A republic has a constitution to protect the minority. So in
Correct.
many ways,
Protect the individual. So democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding on what to have for dinner. Obviously, the person out is the sheep.
yeah,
A republic is something that protects the individual against the government,
yeah,
and so that's what a republic is. It's an agreement, basically, to allow majority rule, providing that it doesn't step on the individual rights of the individual.
yeah. And right now in these times, I think that a lot of Republicans feel, many people feel like our privacy has been and is beginning to be, beginning to become unconstitutional.
Yeah, and it's like one of the things that we fought in Jeff City is PDMP, which is Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. And I voted against this every time. I don't want the government to have any information on me,
Yeah,
including my name. You know, they want to keep track of what drugs doctors are giving you.
yeah,
And, I would hate to say, well, AJ, because you were on Abilify at the age of 14, you can't have a certain type of job. Or because you were on Adderall at the age of 14, you can't have a gun or you can't drive because of that's basically too much government oversight
yeah,
on people's individuals' liberties and security. And people think, oh, well, it's going to protect lives. I'm like, you look at Ohio, which is the first state to pass PDMP, and they try to say, oh, we're going to stop the opioid abuse and heroin, blah, blah. Actually, it doesn't. I mean, Ohio is still one of the number one deaths for drug overdoses as far as number of deaths. It's done nothing but to collect information, and they sell the people based upon certain type of things when really it doesn't do that. I mean, right now we're going to be voting on Medicaid expansion, and which is basically Obamacare on roids.
yeah,
They're worried about it being repealed on the federal level, so they want to put it on our Missouri state constitution. And you see them selling half the story of we send our money to Washington, D.C., and they send it back to these 38 states, and they list California, New York, and Illinois. Well, those three states, because of this program, are bankrupt.
yeah, yeah. They're going. Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is going to be a first time in history where one of the first times in history where a lot of these states are going bankrupt. I mean, we're not just talking about businesses going bankrupt right now. We're talking about countries and states.
And, people made fun of Sarah Palin about the death panels on Obamacare as far as being part of that. But that's going on right now. I mean, because you're young and you're in the main stream working individual, they're going to do everything they can to help you. Yeah. But once you get to the age 65 or above, then the insurance companies will start regulating, well, that's an expensive procedure. They're at the end of their life anyway. Why don't you do your civic duty and die? I mean, doctors right now have a license to kill, and that's what they're doing. Yeah. My father, he had a heart attack. And then while they were trying to put stents in, he had a stroke on the table. He was 75 years of age. So then they just put him on hospice, and to manage the pain, they just morphined him to death. And his, cause of death was kidney failure from the morphine.
Sure.
So they basically morphined him to death. I mean, doctors have a license to kill, and even though they're there to try to make you better, they pick winners and losers there as well, and I don't want the government to be able to do that.
No, I would absolutely agree with that. So I would vote against anything that would take away the privacy and vote against what our Constitution is, because I personally don't think that America can even be America if it doesn't live on the foundation of the Constitution that we have. And there's big changes that need to be made and the invasion of our privacy.
So, like, even with our Second Amendment rights, in Missouri, before I became part of the House, they passed a concealed carry permit. and the sheriff would do a background check on you, and you got to take a class, and then they're going to make a database of that, and they had it in the law saying that this is going to be an in-house database. No one will get a hold of this, and sure enough, with Governor Nixon, he handed the database over to Homeland Security. So it's like you broke the law saying this is going to be in-house. You've just shared it with Homeland Security. So now they have a list of everybody who has a gun and what type of gun they have, and we have these registry. I mean, I don't want the government to know my name.
Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely sound like a conspiracy theorist.
No,
but
because here's the
so
thing.
be it.
What do you say to the people that say, what do you have to worry about if you're not a criminal? What do you say to those people?
True, but it's like the COVID stuff. I mean, you don't put in prison the healthy.
Yeah.
You put in quarantine the sick.
Yeah.
You don't put in prison the law-abiding citizens. You put in prison the criminals, the ones that don't obey the laws. And we have it backwards, where we're putting, criminals are running amok, and yet we have our law-abiding citizens. The person who opens up that barber shop under there, they're the ones that are going to jail.
Yeah. So
like
really, that information can be used against you, because even though you may not be a criminal, if somebody has someone in a position of power has something particular they don't like about what you do, like you're a Republican, or that you're a Christian, or that you're this, that, or the other thing, now they have everything about you.
And that's what you see on some of the talking points. It's identity politics.
Yeah.
And so they're picking people, winners and losers, based upon their identity, not by their character. I mean, Martin Luther King talked about getting rid of the skin suit and picking people by their integrities, their talents, their character. That's how we should be picking people, not necessarily by their identity. And I think Ben Franklin said it best: those are willing to give up their liberties for security deserve neither.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And right now, I think there's a lot of people. I saw this thing on Facebook. It said it had like a picture of the Revolutionary War, and it said, hard times make strong men.
Oh,
strong men make good times.
Good
times make weak men, and weak men make hard times.
Yes, and that's the problem that we're having now. Is we have weak men are causing bad times,
and they're weak because they value comfort too much.
It's not necessarily there. It's really easy to say yes. It's hard to say no. I mean, we have some, my parents said no to me a lot. In order for me to go do something, I basically had to pass an act of Congress and prove to them that how viable it was for me to do X, Y, and Z. But parents nowadays are not engaged. They love their kids, but I've dealt with parents who come to parent-teacher conference just because they have to, not because they want to, and they get upset because it's not a good parent-teacher conference, but they've never done the work or build the foundation of that child to make sure that they're successful. They basically, I deal with kids all the time that have raised themselves.
Yeah.
And the parents are too busy working. I mean, as part of the problem that we've had is we've lost the nuclear family. We give government rewards to be a single mom. We don't promote the a father and mother and a nuclear family.
Yeah, and that's really important. It's a foundation that is really important, because people they can learn from teachers, they can learn from government. But one of the things we're seeing, and you're a teacher that I really respect. But there's a lot of teachers that do definitely teach, with a bias, with especially when it comes to history.
Or they have no bias at all, but they have no relationship with their students. The kids come in, they do their song and dance, the kids leave, they put a grade down. They don't invest themselves in their students, or they invest themselves in only like one or two students. I invested myself in every student.
How do you do that though? With how do you find even time to spend all that time with each person?
You make time. You have to get to put forth the effort to make that connection, to learn about that person. You make you start to point out the good things in that person. You recognize the positives in that person, and then the negatives. You're like, okay, how can we shave off the rough edges of this negative aspect so that they can function?
Yeah. And that's a really important thing. And again, it's an important thing for entrepreneurs as well, because you have to have fantastic relationships with people because it's really the only thing as a business owner that you're responsible for. You could have someone else do the services. You could have someone else sell it, but you have to have enough good relationships with people that they want to do business with you.
Yeah, and your regular customers that come into your store, you have a relationship with them.
Yep.
Having a product or a service that they like is one aspect, but the ones that will sing your song to other people are the ones that you've built a foundation and you've taken the time to get to know them or help them with a problem that they're trying to solve, try to provide that service. You have to build that bond where you have integrity, where you have a trust, where you have a foundation of relationships, and that's where your entrepreneurship is. And you have to continue to build your clientele. So you have to continue to build more relationships and more foundations to make your network circle bigger.
Absolutely. If you had any type of advice for someone right now that maybe they're struggling in their career, maybe they want to become a business owner, and they're looking at making a vast change because of COVID-19 and the changes that are happening. What in looking for a career have you always taught your students to, like, how do they know what they should be doing?
Um, that's a loaded question with lots of answers. As far as the networking goes, you're going to have to spend time to actively listen. Listening to someone is not enough. You have to be engaged in their conversation and their needs. So you have to be an active listener. You have to be someone who is responsible for your actions. And if something goes wrong, our guys screwed up. We meant to do this. I didn't make myself clear. You have to be able to communicate. We'll make this right. So you have to have integrity. You have to be honest. You have to be accessible. If you have an issue and you call, one of the things as a state rep that I've done is I've given my cell number out to everyone.
Yeah.
And you call, I answer.
Yeah.
And if I'm busy doing something, that means I call you back. Hey, this is Bryan Spenser. I saw a number. You called me about 30 minutes ago. You called me yesterday. What you have to say is important to me. You have me in person. I always like it when they call my office and I pick up, and not my staff.
Yeah.
And they're like, "This is the Bryan Spenser." Yes, this is me. Well, I figured I'd be talking to one of your staff. No, it's my job to be working for you.
Sure.
So it's my job to talk to you.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of time. It takes effort, and it's not just time and effort. It's a conscious effort. And if you got to get in a pattern of doing that on a regular basis, whether it's for your business or whether it's for your person, I know everything that I can, or at least one or two tidbits on friends. If I have a friend that I know likes hot sauce, if I go somewhere and I see a bottle of hot sauce, I'm going to pick it up. It doesn't have to be their birthday. It doesn't have to be Christmas. It doesn't have to be, I just know that they like this. Hey, I saw this. I thought you might appreciate it. Here you go. And it doesn't have to be something that costs money either.
Yeah.
It's just the conscious effort to be
thoughtful of others.
Thoughtful of others. Yeah, you have to invest in other people in order for them to invest in you.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that people, now this is an unpopular thing, and I said this on Facebook the other day, and I've been broke, so by all means, I don't slam anybody for being broke, but typically we find when someone is 100% broke or they're really in a tough place in life. It's a hard pill to swallow, but I've found that it's usually because you're not focused on other people enough. Uh, what do you believe about that? Do you think that people that really do you think that's one of the scientific things to success is focus on other people?
Well, you need to focus on other people, but I'm a big advocate is if you can't take care of yourself,
Yeah.
you can't take care of others. So, I mean, you have to be somewhat selfish in a little bit.
Yeah.
So, in order to be selfless, you have to be selfish.
Yeah, Jesus
So,
says take the needle out of your eye and before you take the needle out of your friend's eye.
but it's kind of like a fat person at the gym. People will mock them, make fun of them, but I admire that person because they are actually seeing a need and doing something about it.
Yeah.
Because you had me in school when I was
Yeah.
a bodybuilder. Now I'm fat, so you got to see both efforts.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I seen pictures back then. I was probably a little late. You were already on the heavier side by that time, but I
I was
think
on my way out.
I think you were in your 30s and 40s when you were a bodybuilder. I saw the pictures. I'm like, there's no way this is the same person.
Yeah,
So
it is. It is. I always like it when people find that. It's like, that's not you. I'm like, yeah, it is. But you got to have your goal in mind, and you got to stay focused, and there's all kinds of things that will tempt you not to put forth your goal. I know that when I'm a goal-oriented person, so if I have a goal, I have it written down where I can see it on a regular basis, and then I have reminders all over the place.
you told me about that fridge thing. Can you remind me about that fridge thing?
So, well,
That stuck with me for a long time.
So when
that you did that.
when I was doing the bodybuilding thing, I would put a sign on my mirror, and it would say, "If you're not happy with what you're looking at, do something about it, or do something to change it." I'd have a picture on the way out of my bedroom, and it'd have a picture of what I want to look like, and it'd say "champion," and I'd have a picture on my door, and it says "purpose." What's your purpose? And then I'd have a sign located, somewhere else, whether it's taped to my dashboard. It's like, what are you doing to accomplish your goals today? What are you doing to move towards your goals today? I mean, I had these signs everywhere. I mean, when I was doing the bodybuilding thing, it's like, and especially during COVID, because even though I'm fat and I'm trying to go back down the other way, even though I'm a firm believer that if I'm going to pay $10,000 for a casket, I might as well fill it up. Even though I was trying to move down the other way because someone told me you can buy an extra large casket, which costs more money. I put a sign in my refrigerator that says, "You're eating because you're bored, not because you're hungry. Shut the door, fat boy." And so
you're a little rough on yourself there, but
well, you have to. If you're not honest with yourself, I mean,
yeah.
you won't be honest with others.
I've really enjoyed this. Now, I do want to, because there's people that are watching this that may want to figure out how do they support Bryan Spenser? How do they meet you? Where would they go? Is there an event that you're going to anytime soon that you could say, hey, if you attend this?
So I'm going to be at a lot of different events, and my calendar changes often.
Sure.
On Facebook, it's Bryan Spenser or Representative Bryan Spenser. My campaign is Citizens for Spenser. My cell phone number is 314-740-1050. You're welcome to call me, email me. You show up. If you want to call me the night before and say, where you at? I'm like, I'll tell you. But I'm doing everything all the time, and my calendar often changes. But
yeah,
I'll be running for Senate in 2022. There's currently a senator in the seat in their 4-year terms.
Okay.
We're at the halfway point of her term, and then she'll be termed out.
Okay.
So I'll be running for that. I'm going to be doing an online auction because, with the government controlling the narrative right now, you have to make adaptable.
Yeah.
That's another thing for entrepreneurs. You have to be able to adapt to fit the needs of your people. And so with halls and things like that are not available. So you have to adapt. I'm doing an online auction, which is overstockauctions.com, I believe it is.
Overstockoptions.com.
And then on Tuesday, August the 4th, I'll be at the VFW Hall for an election watch party from 7 until like 10:30. Come on out.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. We're going to link a lot of those things, some of the websites that you mentioned. We're going to go back. We're going to link them on the page. If you want to meet him, he's an awesome guy. I could say that I've called him multiple times for multiple different reasons.
And you'll get an answer, but you may not like the answer. But
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he helped my so my sister was struggling with some unemployment. I called him up, and he put forth some effort to help me there, and had me send out an email. This is the person to know, for any. I mean, he's a representative of the people right now at this current time.
State agencies don't like me very much.
Yeah, no, I understand, but
yeah, because I give them lots of work.
But this is a guy to know because he knows also a lot of people, and if you want to understand relationships. And that might be the title of this video. If you want to understand relationships, this is a guy to talk to, and that's why I went ahead and I met with you today. So thank you.
It's always good
much for meeting with me.
It's always good to see you. I always appreciate it. I mean, I reached out to you a year ago, and you power washed my house. I'm like, I need a power washer. Who do I go? I can call someone at random, or I'm going to stick with someone I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah, man, it's been a pleasure, and we're going to tune out of this video, but see us in the next, and definitely get a hold of this guy and vote for him in 2022. Make sure to get in there and vote. All right, everybody.